Hello and welcome to Business Daily, coming to you live from Seoul. I'm Lee Ji-yoon. Before we get started, let's take a quick look at some of the stories we're planning to dig into today. A sign that Samsung might be coming out of its profit slump. It tips better than expected first quarter operating profit. Supporting aging parents might no longer be the norm in Korea. How should senior citizens and society better prepare financially? We start with a snapshot of Korea's employment landscape. New data show that hiring at Korea's largest companies is not picking up, despite pressure from the government to create new jobs. According to analysis by business rating agency CEO Score, employment at Korea's top 30 companies grew by 1.3% in 2014, or 0.3 percentage point lower than the figure recorded a year before. Worse still, it observed that the growth rate of contract jobs exceeded those of permanent jobs by 4 times. CEO Score called this situation, quote, concerning, saying it virtually put hiring at a standstill. We're seeing a polarizing trend in the spending habits of Koreans. Sales at large retailers, popular among low and middle-income consumers, mostly declined in the first quarter year-on-year. Lotte Mart posted a 3% drop and Home Plus a 0.9% dip, while Korea's largest retailer, E-Mart, only grew by 0.8%. On the other hand, sales of luxury designer labels at high-end department stores flourished, recording gains of up to 15%. The trend reflects a challenging time for low and middle-income earners in Korea's extended economic slump. More Koreans are turning their eyes to direct investment in China, in some cases running dry fund quotas. This boom in Chinese investment funds in Korea comes for the first time in a decade, in anticipation of the inclusion of Chi-Next, a Nasdaq-style board for high-tech companies, on the Hong Kong Shenzhen Stock Connect, kicking off later in the year. In the case of Samsung Asset Management, its Chinese investment fund exceeded its quota with a fresh capital inflow of roughly $132 billion this year, bringing it to a soft closing late last month. More and more Korean companies are looking to developing countries for business opportunities. And Son Jung-in has this report about a Korean engineering firm that's modernizing Cambodian agriculture by building on one of the country's past achievements.
Cambodia's warm climate and flat land make it possible to grow 3 crops a year if you could solve the water problem. But 90% of the land isn't farmed efficiently due to a lack of infrastructure such as irrigation, transport, and technology. However, it's a different story near the West Baray Reservoir in Siem Reap province. The large man-made body of water is surrounded by fertilized soil that can be used for farming year-round, even during the dry season. The reservoir has been providing irrigation for farmland since the 11th century. Now, Innovia Construction, a Korean SME, has launched a pilot project to replicate the reservoir's success in Phnom Penh. They built a reservoir on 4 hectares of land, creating a bank and farmland around it using the dug-up soil. The water, which builds up during the rainy season, can be used for farming at any time, while the reservoir does double duty as a freshwater fish nursery. Coupled with a favorable seasonal environment for agriculture, the facility is proving to be a valuable resource for farming.
With support from the Cambodian government, we could introduce this business model as a national project. If so, we are planning to invest in it after reviewing its profitability.
The pilot project is expected to open new opportunities for Korean SMEs to enter Cambodia's agricultural industry. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
And longer life expectancy coupled with Korean parents who invest largely in their children's education could lead to financial difficulties for senior citizens down the road. Latest data also show that looking after elderly parents is being considered less the norm here in Korea. But our Connie Kim tells us that families, society, and the government all need to work together to find ways to financially support the graying population.
Children taking care of their aging parents has been the norm in Korea's deep-rooted Confucian culture for centuries. But is it still the case these days?
I don't think it's possible for families to solely look after aging parents. Life expectancy has gotten longer while people are retiring earlier.
After raising my kids, I don't want to become a burden to them after I stop working. I think the government needs to play an active role in supporting seniors. This seems to be the growing public sentiment. A report by the Korea Development Institute shows that over the past decade, children who think they should support their aging parents plunged from about 70% to slightly over 30%.
The drop is mainly due to the shrinking size of families and parents putting a priority on investing in their children's education. These factors are quickly diminishing the traditional norm of supporting elderly parents.
Kim, the author of the report, says a changing culture has resulted in more senior citizens unable to financially support themselves. Korea's elderly poverty and suicide rates rank the highest among OECD nations. In light of those grim figures, this report calls on families, society, and the government to work together to find ways to economically and emotionally support aging generations. It also calls for the government to create a system that will revitalize the social well-being of seniors.
Some community welfare centers have programs that help engage the elderly and younger generations. But there needs to be more social workers and programs that aim to nurture active participation from the elderly population.
While systematic support is key, experts also say it's necessary for individuals to do more to prepare for their senior years.
Many are aware of the seriousness of Korea's aging society and elderly poverty problem, but not much is actively done. People should have a portfolio of income sources aside from their monthly pension payments.
Korea's welfare ministry says 3 out of 10 people over the age of 65 continue to work post-retirement, mainly to support daily living costs. This as 11% of senior citizens say they've thought of committing suicide, mainly due to economic hardships. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
The numbers are in. By numbers, we're talking about corporation's first quarter earnings, including earnings for Korea's biggest conglomerate, Samsung Electronics. And Arirang News' Song Ji-sun joins us in the studio this morning to break down some numbers for us. Hello, Ji-sun.
Good morning, Jian.
All right, so it was a surprise, but in a good way.
That is correct. And a lot of analysts were saying it was an earnings surprise compared to earnings shock we saw in the third quarter last year, and we're definitely seeing a lot of improvements.
Well, first, before you go on, though, can you tell us why we need to pay attention to Samsung's figures?
Well, we all know that Samsung is the biggest company in Korea, and in terms of market capitalization, that accounts for 14% of all companies listed on the main bourse. And its profits account for even more at 1/5 of all profits logged by the listed firms on the main bourse as well. And Samsung's performance is also an indicator for domestic and international demand, and it's also a sentiment for the manufacturing in the ICT sector as well.
Okay, so it would be safe for us to say that Samsung is improving profitability.
Right, and I must say that the Korean tech giant fared relatively well than we expected, and we also saw that it's a very slow season for the industry, but they really did good. Well, Samsung's sales for the first 3 months of this year stood at $43 billion, down 11% from last year. And while the sales fell slightly short of market expectations, profits actually beat market consensus, gaining 12% from the fourth quarter of last year.
Okay.
And analysts also say that Samsung's efforts to reduce costs in producing the semiconductor line, as well as expanding their product mix in the handsets, also helped improve their profits.
Okay, so that's how they did in the first quarter. And I guess you are saying that then Samsung underperformed year on year, but then it did better if we were comparing to the previous quarter.
Right, we have to look at the operating profit, which matters when we're evaluating a company's performance. Now let's take a look at this graph. When Samsung sold a product worth $100, they only made $8 back in the third quarter last year when they logged an earnings shock. But the smartphone maker's profitability also bounced back to double digits in last quarter of last year and is now on a path of recovery.
Okay. Well, shifting our gears a bit, we're now just about 2 days before Samsung launches its Galaxy S6 models, and you were actually at the World Mobile Congress back in March, right?
Right.
And you were able to see those mobile phones. How were they? What did you make out of it?
Well, I think the media attention there was very overwhelming, and it was the major event. The unpacked release of the Galaxy S6 was the spotlight of the MWC 2015. And if we take a close listen of the people who actually got a close look before we did, take a listen what these people thought about the Galaxy S6 models.
I noticed that it felt different. It's not like the previous Galaxy S smartphones because Samsung has done a great job with the design of the phone by making the front and the back sides of glass and putting this great metal frame, this very sturdy frame around the device. It's durable, yet it looks amazing.
I have a feeling that there's been a lot of effort done into the design. The message is very clear. And it really comes to a point where you're considering seriously abandoning the iPhone and taking up a Samsung because it just seems like a new experience.
And on top of that, Samsung also put a lot of efforts into making the new smartphone attractive for consumers on the tech side. If you take a look from the processor's chips to RAM capacity, and even the camera resolution outperforms that of iPhones, and Samsung is now on par with Apple in terms of wireless charging and fingerprint recognition.
Okay, so I guess what's important now is that how well these new models will do in the high-end smartphone market.
Right, this will be actually the deciding factor in how Samsung will do in the coming month, and the figures for the upcoming quarters as the Galaxy S6 sales will definitely decide its profits for the coming month. And market analysts are looking forward to some $7 billion for the second quarter profits with this new series. They're actually expecting a top 50 million units of annual sales to become the best-selling smartphone model for Samsung. And here's a reason why they're raising the sales forecast for Samsung's new generation mobile phone.
They are changing their design also, and also they changing the upgrading the specification products. They upgrade mobile DRAM, they upgrade AP from 32-bit processors to 64-bit processors. So I think that they're gonna be very successful in Q2 because there's no other competitors in Q2 in terms of the new products.
Wow, Chisun, I'm quite impressed by the new upgrades. And I guess since there are really no competitors that are going to be launching new models in the next quarter, I guess Samsung could do pretty well.
Right, we can expect better figures next quarter, I guess, and we're hoping for that news next quarter.
All right, thanks for coming in today.
Pleasure.
And that brings us to the end. We hope to see you right back here at the same time tomorrow. Thanks for watching.